Imagine holding a piece of paper that dictates your fate. A medical report. It tells you that you have cancer, or that you are pregnant, or that your organs are failing. You trust the paper. You make life-altering decisions based on the numbers printed in black ink. Now, imagine tens of thousands of those papers are entirely fake. In May 2016, a Silicon Valley darling quietly informed federal regulators that it was voiding 2 solid years of blood testing results. Tens of thousands of reports sent to real patients, real doctors, erased. At that exact moment, this company was valued at $9 billion. Its CEO was celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire in human history. She sat on panels with former presidents. She collected capital from the wealthiest families on Earth. She did all of this without a working product. This isn't a story about a failed startup. It is the anatomy of a massive financial illusion. A surgical strike on human psychology, regulatory blind spots, and the greed of private equity. How do you evaporate $9 billion, defraud investors of over $700 million, and manipulate the highest levels of the United States government using nothing but modified hardware and trade secrets? You sell them a drop of blood. It starts at Stanford. 2003, Elizabeth Holmes is a 19-year-old chemical engineering dropout. She has an idea that targets a primal human fear: needles. Drawing blood is slow, painful, and expensive. Holmes proposes a disruption, a proprietary microfluidic technology that can run hundreds of clinical tests, from cholesterol to cancer markers, using a single drop of capillary blood drawn from the finger. She calls the company Real-Time Cures. Soon, she renames it Theranos. Silicon Valley trades on myth. Holmes engineers hers flawlessly. She adopts the uniform, the black turtleneck. She adopts the voice, an unnatural baritone. She adopts the schedule, working around the clock, demanding absolute loyalty. And the capital responds. Between 2004 and 2006, Theranos raises tens of millions in seed and early-stage rounds. The pitch is intoxicating. If you control blood testing, you control the gateway to the global healthcare market. But early venture capital isn't enough. Holmes needs an aura of invincibility. She needs institutional validation. In 2010, the company hits a critical inflection point. Theranos raises $45 million in its 4th funding round. The valuation crosses the mythic threshold, $1.12 billion. Theranos is officially a unicorn. This is the psychological trap of private markets. Once a company crests $1 billion, skepticism vanishes. Investors assume someone else has done the math, someone else has checked the physics. They haven't. Instead of peer-reviewed scientific journals, Holmes builds her fortress out of reputational capital. She constructs arguably the most intimidating board of directors in corporate history. George P. Shultz, former U.S. Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, James Mattis, a retired 4-star Marine Corps general, Sam Nunn, former chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Richard Kovacevic, former CEO of Wells Fargo, Riley Bechtel. Notice the pattern: politics, military, banking. Not a single diagnostic expert, not a single laboratory scientist. These are men trained in geopolitics and warfare, not microfluidics. Holmes weaponizes their ignorance. By insulating herself with state-level heavyweights, she creates a reality distortion field that blocks standard due diligence. You don't ask Henry Kissinger for a lab report, you just cut the check. By 2013, the web is spun. Theranos announces a landmark partnership with Walgreens. They open wellness centers in pharmacies across Arizona and California. The black box, dubbed the Edison Analyzer, is going public. By 2014, private market valuations hit $10 billion. Forbes places Holmes' net worth at $4.5 billion. She owns the supervoting shares. She controls the board. She controls the narrative. But behind the locked doors of the Newark, California laboratory, the narrative is mathematically impossible. A lie of this scale requires infrastructure. It requires a systemic, coordinated assault on truth. Let's dissect the mechanics of the fraud. The core premise of Theranos was a lie of physics. You cannot run a full panel of complex diagnostic tests on a single drop of capillary blood. The sample is too small. Squeezing the finger corrupts the blood with interstitial fluid. The cells rupture, the blood clots. The Edison machines didn't work. They were boxes of unreliable gears and failing robotics. So Theranos pivoted to a shadow operation. Between 2013 and 2014, while pitching the Edison to investors as an engineering marvel, Theranos secretly conducted the vast majority of its patient tests on modified commercial analyzers built by standard medical companies like Siemens. To run fingerstick blood on machines designed for large intravenous vials, Theranos scientists had to dilute the samples. They diluted the blood so heavily that the results became wildly distorted. When internal proficiency tests showed that the Edison data completely failed to match standard laboratory equipment, the company didn't inform regulators. They buried the data. They weaponized the concept of trade secrets to compartmentalize the staff. Engineers couldn't talk to chemists. Chemists couldn't see the aggregate error rates. Overseeing this climate of fear was Ramesh Sunny Balwani, Theranos' president and chief operating officer. Balwani possessed zero medical training. His role was an enforcer. He suppressed internal dissent, fired whistleblowers on the spot, and controlled the data flow to the political board of directors. Then came the financial fabrication. By 2014, Theranos was burning cash on R&D, legal fees, and operational chaos. Holmes and Balwani needed hundreds of millions to keep the lights on and the illusion alive. They took their pitch to wealthy private networks. The messaging was completely detached from reality. Holmes and Balwani presented revenue projections to investors, stating Theranos would generate over $100 million in 2014 and nearly $1 billion in 2015. They promised they were on the verge of positive cash flow. The hard truth? In 2014, Theranos generated slightly more than $100,000 in revenue from operations, a $99.9 million gap. It was a phantom ledger, but the investors bought it. Between 2013 and 2015, Theranos raised another $632 million from elite families. Rupert Murdoch alone wired $100 million. The Cox family sent another $100 million. To justify these numbers, Theranos lied about its deployments. Marketing materials and investor decks explicitly claimed that Theranos technology was actively utilized by the U.S. Department of Defense in Afghanistan. They pitched images of medevac helicopters equipped with Edisons, saving soldiers on the battlefield. None of it was true. The U.S. military never deployed the technology. Yet, the lies effectively secured Walgreens. In corporate boardrooms, Theranos assured Walgreens executives that the tech was flawless, intentionally withholding internal quality control failures. Walgreens handed over their pharmacy floor space, effectively turning innocent consumers into beta testers for an experimental and flawed product. This wasn't just accounting fraud. This was a biological hazard masquerading as software expansion. The operation was a closed loop. The engineers were silenced. The investors were hypnotized. The board was comprised of politicians perfectly positioned to intimidate federal regulators. The matrix was flawless, until someone actually looked at the data. The collapse of a $9 billion empire takes years to build, but only months to fall. In October 2015, the Wall Street Journal published a blistering exposé. Journalist John Carreyrou revealed that Theranos was running just a fraction of its tests on the Edison machines. He exposed the Siemens alterations. He exposed the inaccuracies. Holmes immediately went on television, ice cold, unblinking. "This is what happens when you work to change things," she said. "First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden, you change the world." It was a brilliant PR defense. It was also her final performance. By early 2016, the federal government had seen enough. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, arrived at the Newark laboratory. What they found was a systemic collapse of quality control. The lab was citing results that risked severe injury or death. Theranos was trapped. In May 2016, they pulled the pin on their own grenade. They informed regulators they were voiding 2 entire years of Edison blood testing results. Tens of thousands of corrected reports were issued. Patients discovered they had been treated for conditions they never had, or ignored conditions they actually suffered from. The dominoes accelerated. In June, Walgreens terminated the relationship, abruptly closing all in-store wellness centers. In July, CMS dropped the ultimate regulatory hammer. They banned Elizabeth Holmes from owning or operating a clinical laboratory for 2 years. They revoked the Newark Lab's license. The revenue stream, already microscopic, flatlined completely. Then came the lawyers. In April 2017, the Arizona Attorney General forced Theranos to refund $4.65 million to more than 175,000 Arizona citizens. Another major investor, Partner Fund Management, who dropped $96.1 million into the company, sued for securities fraud, ending in a confidential equity settlement. Walgreens settled out for $44 million. Theranos was bleeding cash through legal defense and settlements. The $1.3 billion in total equity raised over its lifetime was evaporating. On March 14, 2018, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission formally charged Theranos, Holmes, and Balwani with an elaborate, years-long fraud. They outlined how the duo extracted over $700 million from investors through sophisticated deception. Holmes settled. She paid a $500,000 fine. She returned 18.9 million shares. She relinquished her supervoting control. She accepted a 10-year ban from serving as an officer of a public company. It was a corporate death penalty. By September 2018, Theranos notified its remaining investors that it was dissolving to pay creditors. The unicorn was dead. But the federal government wasn't finished. 3 months after the SEC charges, a federal grand jury indicted Holmes and Balwani on multiple counts of wire fraud. This was no longer just a regulatory dispute. It was criminal. 2 multi-million-dollar schemes, one targeting the investors, one targeting the doctors and patients. The trials of 2021 and 2022 were a spectacle of corporate pathology. Holmes shifted blame to Balwani, claiming emotional and psychological control. But under cross-examination, the paper trail choked her. She admitted to jurors that she personally authorized using the altered Siemens analyzers. She admitted she followed legal advice to intentionally withhold that fact from Walgreens. Theranos scientists testified that Holmes was directly copied on emails detailing the catastrophic failures of the Edison tests long before the commercial launch. In January 2022, the jury reached a verdict. Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of defrauding investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars. 7 months later, Sonny Balwani faced his own jury. He was convicted on all 12 counts of fraud and conspiracy. On November 18, 2022, the judge handed down the math. Elizabeth Holmes, the visionary, the billionaire, the darling of Silicon Valley, was sentenced to 135 months in federal prison, 11 years and 3 months. Weeks later, Balwani received 155 months, almost 13 years. There is a mechanical rule to modern capital. Money does not demand physics, it demands a story. Theranos did not raise $1.3 billion because its technology worked. It raised $1.3 billion because Elizabeth Holmes understood the exact psychological profile of the modern investor. They wanted a genius, so she dressed like one. They wanted disruption, so she promised them the end of the needle. They wanted security, so she put the architects of American foreign policy on her board. The investors didn't perform due diligence because they believed the board had done it. The board didn't analyze the blood because they assumed the billionaire investors had audited the math. A perfect circle of assumed competence. A multi-billion-dollar game of musical chairs played with human lives. Silicon Valley's central mantra is, "Fake it till you make it." It works perfectly for software. If a dating app crashes, nobody bleeds. If a social network glitches, you just push an update. But when you apply the mechanics of software hype to human biology, the glitch is a misdiagnosed cancer. The update is a federal indictment. The Theranos collapse leveled $9 billion of synthetic wealth into complete zero. It proved that in the upper echelons of finance, the greatest asset you can leverage isn't a patent. It's the suspension of disbelief. You would think the markets learned their lesson. You would think the venture capital firms updated their risk models. But human greed has a very short memory. Just as the blood dried in California, a new breed of founders realized that you don't need to fake medical science to steal $1 billion. You just need to invent a new kind of money entirely. We will open that ledger next time.